Right across these plains and prairies, Rocky Mountain highs, fade off into the distance like ghost riders in the sky. Black smoke and white line, steel horses side by side. It's more than just a living, y'all. Hell, it's our way of life. We're the last of the cowboys, the giddy up gone boys. 18 wheels on the concrete, it's a slow and dying breed, rolling like Jesse James, modern day outlaw game. If you're out here riding with me, come on back and make some noise. We're the last of the cowboys. It's a family tradition, diesel's running through our veins. Our daddy showed us the roads, we were born in the fast lane. Branded by our heroes, taught to saddle up and move. We keep this country rolling, we're damn proud of what we do. We're the last of the cowboys, the giddy up gone boys. 18 wheels on the concrete, it's a slow and dying breed, rolling like Jesse James, modern day outlaw game. If you're out here riding with me, come on back and make some noise. We're the last of the cowboys.
Да, чувачку не повезло. Контейнер слетел прям с трака. Да ты чё? Ну чё, всем привет! Отстояли мы с вами эти воздушные ресиверы пустые полностью. Отстояли с того вторника. Сегодня у нас уже четверг. Попробуем запустить. Надеемся, батареи не сильно дохлые. Окей, котяра рулит. Так, это у нас ABS поморгало, suspension dump. Выключаем вот эту кнопочку. Никаких ошибок нету. Отлично. Прогреваем, едем в порт. Вытаскивать себе контейнеры. Тёма вытащил на портовских часах. Свои пока запарковал. И в пятницу будем с вами работать. Дальничок у нас на пятницу намечается. Ух ты, Ешка 36 попалась нам в кадре. Значит, хорошо трак белый, да? Чайки обгадили уже. Красавцы просто. Ступеньку, глушитель и спалку. Ну и черным покрылось все. Ступенька в белых пятнах. Глушитель, еще и бак весь. Это ж надо было так дристануть. На спалке не видно. Сегодня едем буквально через дорогу на терминал Хаски или порт. Здесь же в Такоме. И тут буквально вот один трак. Один трак на весы заехал, другой с весов только съехал. Все. Больше траков нету. И вот впереди меня. Впереди меня вот один трак с двумя флатбедами заезжает. Прикольная здесь вывеска такая. Здесь вот камера у нас. Appointments only. No early arrival. Вывеску поставили, что только по аппоинтментам раздают грузы. И если вы рано приехали, короче, нельзя рано приезжать. Вот что эта вывеска значит. лето на дворе. Так что мы ходим в куртке, так как холодина, дышать нечем. И солнца нету. Прикольно. Вообще кто-то знает, лето начнется этим летом или вообще нет? Или его отменили и нам ничего не сказали? Приколы просто, а? Вот дела, а? Вот дела. Так, заезжаем в порт. Вот такие тучки классные у нас впереди. Красивое небо. Да, и гору Ренир тоже не видно, к сожалению. Ну ничего. Значит, как я сказал, сегодня у нас планы вытащить контейнер, а завтра с утра пораньше рвануть на дальничок. Так что спасибо боссу. Дальняк в пятницу, это вообще классно. Развеяться, выехать, так показать. Ну, обхаженный, ну ничего, себя показать. Ну, старого, ну ничего.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Yeah. По Италии, я говорю, да. 3 раза взад-вперед туда ездил, на мой license plate смотрел. На мой номер. Ну ничего, мы сейчас делаем Юи. Вот так влево, еще раз влево. И под кран заезжаем. Так, народ. Это что у нас уже мой контейнер держит? GSU 649 475 4. Окей. Все, вот он кран. Наш контейнер в воздухе. Чуть-чуть проезжаем. Отлично. Загрузка произошла успешно. Сзади нас уже синенький контейнер стоит. Все, сейчас паркуемся до дома. И если что, никуда не разбегаться. Завтра с утра выезжаем. Воу. Ты что так это самое? А если нас просто пропустить, а? А то они это самое, иногда не могут попасть. У них эта стрела падает с контейнера в бок. Ну и может мне по глушителю дать. А оно нам не надо. Оно даже это им не надо. Сейчас глушителя подорожали. Уже за 2500, 2600 ничего нет. Уже 4000 надо отдать. Металл, понимаешь, ты подорожал. Все, вот таким образом загрузились по быстрячку. Сейчас выскакиваем на парковочку до дома. А завтра с утречка пораньше.
Ticket number.
39
That's right.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Красавчик. Так. Мы, наверное, станем сюда кудось. Так, замки замкнули.
Ух ты, а это до сих пор стоит. Уже таком ополыс приехали. Слетел контейнер с трака, с пятого колеса, с fifth wheel, и все. Что ты будешь делать? Да, не прикольно. Так что, мужчины, прокачу вас немного на бэхе. Всем спасибо, кто посмотрел этот коротенький ролик до конца. Я как-то думал все в один ролик соединить, загрузку и завтрашнюю разгрузку. Потом думаю, да ладно уже. Это уже и так неделю, наверное, с лишним ничего не выставлял. Кто соскучился, вот это именно для вас. Ну а кому, как говорится, до одного места, жив я, не жив, как он там, дядя Вова, поживает, то это получается не для вас. Но, тем не менее, всем вам жму крепко краба, кто прокатился сегодня со мной. Ну и всех жду завтра с утречка пораньше. Так что всем огромное спасибоньки. Так, Бэха, ты не выезжай. Вот у нас здесь спидолимида показывает. Вот. О, написано slow down. Еще чего. типа того, превышаешь скорость, давай потише. Ну как я тебе потише? У меня все 10 цилиндров рабочие. Так нельзя просто. Когда у тебя 10 горшков рабочих, тут надо просто наваливать. От заправки до заправки. Ну иначе никак. О, Coca-Cola International Canvas. О, второй сорт, что я говорил. Peterbilt возит Pepsi, первый сорт, а Coca-Cola везет второй сорт Canvas. Ну, International то вообще это, как все говорят, не чипай амно, вонять не будет. Так у нас в Америке за International говорят. Так что извиняюсь, никого не хочу обидеть, кто там на International ездит. Просто говорю как есть. Опа! Это что-то было Chevy Nova? Да нет, что-то больше было. Что-то побольше было. Все, мужики, я до дому. Если что, всем до завтрачка. Всем спасибо, всем пока. Заводим шарманочку. Домой приехал. Думал, у нас еще тут внуки. А внуки уже разъехались. Остались мы одни с бабушкой. С молодой. Так. По хамбургеру. Мне еще вот этот брат люблю. Ну и халапеньо это обязательно. Вот такой у нас с бабушкой будет сегодня динер. И будем смотреть дебаты. Сегодня у нас левые против правых. Так, народ, посыпочку использую вот такую. Grill Mates Montreal Steak Seasoning. Ну и соль и все. Этот брат у нас со свиньи. Брательник. Прям капает с него, течет все. Такая вкуснятина получается. Чуть-чуть уже подгорает. Так, булки надо обязательно немного подпалить. Это не обсуждается. Ага. Сейчас сырок мы бабушке закинем. Дедушка без сырка, а бабулька наша с сырком. Чудово получается. Все. Это уже все. Ну ты, мамулька, и сделала. Так, я себе наваливаю халапеньо мастер. Так, в 2 этажа ложите цибулька, помидорчик, опять лучок и опять помидорчик. Ну и лерос так сверху наложили. Все это дело прикрываем. И потом еще у нас идет халапеньо и банана пеппер. То же самое. Все, короче, спайси. Ну и закусываем халапеньо пеппером обязательно. Так, через минуту начинается Трамп vs. Байден. Михалыча мы уже посмотрели. Опа, леваки заходят. Я чуть бургерный подавился. Два наших старичка.
Also, and because that has to do with other things, you got to get elected.
Мы уже на 15 минуте. Байден еще не уснул. Да, еще не спит. Молодец, ни разу не упал.
And will the vast majority of constitutional scholars supported Roe when it was decided. Supported Roe. And that's this idea that they're all against it is just ridiculous. And this is the guy who says the state should be able to have it. We're a state where in 6 weeks, you don't even know whether you're pregnant or not, but you cannot see a doctor and have him decide on what your circumstances are, whether you need help. The idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states, that each state have a different rule. Look, there's so many young women who have been, including a young woman who just was murdered, and he went to the funeral. The idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming into, they talk about that. But here's the deal: there's a lot of young women being raped by their in-laws, by their spouses, brothers and sisters. It's just ridiculous, and they can do nothing about it. And they try to arrest them when they cross state lines.
Thank you.
There have been many young women murdered by the same people he allows to come across our border. We have a border that's the most dangerous place anywhere in the world, considered the most dangerous place anywhere in the world. And he opened it up, and these killers are coming into our country, and they are raping and killing women. And it's a terrible thing. As far as the abortion is concerned, it is now back with the states. The states are voting. In many cases, it's frankly a very liberal decision. In many cases, it's the opposite. But they're voting, and it's bringing it back to the vote of the people, which is what everybody wanted, including the founders, if they knew about this issue, which frankly they didn't. But they would have, everybody wanted brought back. Ronald Reagan wanted it brought back.
We worked very hard to get a bipartisan agreement that not only changed all of that, it made sure that we are in a situation where you had no circumstance where they could come across the border with the number of border police there are now. We significantly increased the number of asylum officers. Significantly, by the way, the Border Patrol endorsed my position. In addition to that, we found ourselves in a situation where when he was president, he was separating babies from their mothers, putting them in cages, making sure that the families were separated. That's not the right way to go. What I've done since I've changed the law, what's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border legally. It's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we have the safest border in the history of our country. All he had to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country to people that are from prisons, people that are...
Period. That's number one. And number two, the idea that I have to apologize to you for anything along the line. We've done more for veterans than any president has in American history. And they now are in their family. The only sacred obligation we have as a country is to care for our veterans when they come home and their families and equip them when they go to war. That's what we're doing. That's what the VA is doing now. They're doing more for veterans than ever before in our history.
All right, thank you so much.
President Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he'll only end this war if Russia keeps the Ukrainian territory it has already claimed and Ukraine abandons its bid to join NATO. Are Putin's terms acceptable to you?
First of all, our veterans and our soldiers can't stand this guy. They can't stand him. They think he's the worst commander-in-chief, if that's what you call him, that we've ever had. They can't stand him. So let's get that straight. And they like me more than just about any of them. And that's based on every single bit of information. As far as Russia and Ukraine, if we had a real president, the president that knew, that was respected by Putin, he would have never invaded Ukraine. A lot of people are dead right now, much more than people know. You know, they talk about numbers. You can double those numbers, maybe triple those numbers. He did nothing to stop it. In fact, I think he encouraged Russia from going in. I'll tell you what happened. He was so bad with Afghanistan. It was such a horrible embarrassment, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, that when Putin watched that and he saw the incompetence, that he should have fired those generals, like I fired the one that you mentioned, and so he's got no love lost, but he should have fired those generals. No general got fired for the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers, and 38 soldiers were obliterated. And by the way, we left people behind too. We left American citizens behind. When Putin saw that, he said, you know what? I think we're going to go in and maybe take this was his dream. I talked to him about it, his dream. The difference is he never would have invaded Ukraine, never. Just like Israel would have never been invaded in a million years by Hamas. You know why? Because Iran was broke with me. I wouldn't let anybody do business with them. They ran out of money. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for anything. No money for terror. That's why you had no terror at all during my administration. This place, the whole world is blowing up under him.
President Biden?
I've never heard so much malarkey in my whole life. Look, the fact of the matter is that we're in a situation where, let's take the last point first. Iran attacked American troops, caused brain damage for a number of these troops, and he did nothing about it. Recently, not when he was president. They attacked. He said they're just having headaches. That's all it is. He didn't do a thing when the attack took place, number one. Number two, we got over 100,000 Americans and others out of Afghanistan during that airlift. Number three, we found ourselves in a situation where, if you take a look at what Trump did in Ukraine, this guy told Trump, do whatever you want, do whatever you want. And that's exactly what Trump did to Putin, encourage him, do whatever you want. And he went in. And listen to what he said when he went in. He was going to take Kyiv in 5 days, remember? Because it's part of the old Soviet Union. That's what he wanted to reestablish, Kyiv. And he, in fact, didn't do it at all. He wasn't able to get it done. And they've lost thousands and thousands of troops, 500,000 troops.
President Trump,
I never said that.
For 1 minute, I just want to go back to my original question, which is, are Putin's terms acceptable to you? Keeping the territory in Ukraine?
No, they're not acceptable. But look, this is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything like it. Every time that Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever. And I'm not knocking him. I'm not knocking anything. I'm only saying the money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending, it should have never happened. I will have that war settled between Putin and Zelensky as president-elect before I take office on January 20th. I'll have that war settled. People being killed so needlessly, so stupidly, and I will get it settled, and I'll get it settled fast before I take office.
President Biden, you have a minute.
The fact is that Putin is a war criminal. He's killed thousands and thousands of people. And he has made one thing clear. He wants to reestablish what was part of the Soviet Empire, not just a piece. He wants all of Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll stop if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries? And so if you want a war, you ought to find out what he's going to do, because if in fact he does what he says and walks away, by the way, all that money we give Ukraine for weapons we make here in the United States, we give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our NATO allies have produced as much funding for Ukraine as we have. That's why we're strong.
Thank you. Moving on.
Back to Ukraine for 1 second. We have an ocean separating us. The European nations together have spent $100 billion, or maybe more than that, less than us. Why doesn't he call them and say, you got to put up your money like I did with NATO? I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. The Secretary General of NATO said Trump did the most incredible job I've ever seen. They wouldn't have any, they were going out of business. We were spending almost 100% of the money was paid by us. He didn't do that. He's getting you got to ask these people to put up the money. We're over $100 billion more spent, and it has a bigger impact on them because of location, because we have an ocean in between. You got to ask them. As far as Israel and Hamas, Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one that wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
President Biden, you have a minute.
I've never heard so much foolishness. This is a guy who wants to get out of NATO. Are you going to stay in NATO? He's going to pull out of NATO. The idea that we have, our strength lies in our alliances as well. it may be a big ocean, but we're ever able to avoid a war in Europe, a major war in Europe? What happens if, in fact, you have Putin continue to go into NATO? We have an Article 5 agreement. Attack on one is attack on all. You want to start the nuclear war he keeps talking about, go ahead. Let Putin go in and control Ukraine and then move on to Poland and other places. See what happens then. He has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And by the way, I got 50 other nations around the world to support Ukraine, including Japan and South Korea, because they understand that this kind of dislocation has a serious threat to the whole world peace. No major war in Europe has ever been able to be contained just to Europe.
But when he talks about a convicted felon, his son is a convicted felon at a very high level. His son is convicted, going to be convicted probably numerous other times. Should have been convicted before, but his Justice Department let the statute of limitations lapse on the most important things. But he could be a convicted felon as soon as he gets out of office. Joe could be a convicted felon with all of the things that he's done. He's done horrible things. All of the death caused at the border, telling the Ukrainian people that we're going to want $1 billion or you change the prosecutor, otherwise you're not getting $1 billion. If I ever said that, that's quid pro quo. That we're not going to do anything. We're not going to give you $1 billion unless you change your prosecutor having to do with the son. This man is a criminal. This man, you're lucky. You're lucky. I did nothing wrong. We'd have a system that was rigged and disgusting. I did nothing wrong.
Thank you, President Trump.
And just to go back, the general got fired because he was no good. And if he said that, that's why he made it up. But we have 19 people that said I didn't say it, and they're very highly respected, much more so than him. The other thing is, he doesn't fire people. He never fired people. I've never seen him fire anybody. I did fire a lot. I fired Comey because he was no good. I fired a lot of the top people at the FBI, drained the swamp. They were no good. Not easy to fire people. You pay a price for it, but they were no good. I inherited these people. I didn't put him there. I didn't put Comey there. He was no good. I fired him. This guy hasn't fired anybody. He never fires. He should have fired every military man that was involved with that the Afghanistan horror show, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. He didn't fire. Did you fire anybody? Did you fire anybody that's on the border that's allowed us to have the worst border in the history of the world? Did anybody get fired for allowing 18 million people, many from prisons, many from mental institutions? Did you fire anybody that allowed our country to be destroyed? Joe, our country is being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate. He's the worst president. He just said about me because I said it. But look, he's the worst president in the history of our country. He's destroyed our country. Now all of a sudden he's trying to get a little tough on the border. He came out with a nothing deal, and it reduced it a little bit, like this much. It's insignificant. He wants open borders. He wants our country to either be destroyed or he wants to pick up those people as voters. And I don't think, we just can't let it happen. If he wins this election, our country doesn't have a chance, not even a chance, of coming out of this rut. We probably won't have a country left anymore. That's how bad it is. He's the worst in history by far.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden.
Подтверждаю.